Frank, I started off the show talking about this situation based on the Steelers winning a crazy Wednesday afternoon football game. They're 11-0, but I feel like the Chiefs are a lot better. You agree or disagree about the best team in the NFL?
Yeah, and that was not a well-played game yesterday.
No, not at all.
Whenever the Chiefs lose, and it's only happened one time this year, to me it's a shock. And I still think that Mahomes, if you give him a chance at the end of a game with less than 2 minutes to go, I was thinking like of the greatest quarterbacks in the 2-minute drill. Montana, Kenny Stabler way back when was great at it. Brady, this guy, I can't believe this early in his career he's that good at it. They could beat the Chiefs. You almost have to play a flawless game. You obviously have to keep him off the field, and it's almost like you can't give him the ball back with maybe more than 30 seconds to go and less than 80 yards, because somehow, some way, I would almost go for it most of the time if I were the Chiefs on fourth down. I'm so confident that he's either going to throw a short pass or he'll be able to run for a first down. I give the Steelers credit. I think it would take the perfect game for them to beat them. But I don't know. It's just hard to see anybody beating Kansas City.
The way that I think you have to beat the Chiefs is you have to have a really good pass rush from your front four. And by the way, the Steelers lost one of their great defensive ends, Dupree. It appears that in his, I think he was a guy who got franchise tagged. I believe he was scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent next year in theory. He's now out for the season reportedly with a torn ACL. And obviously you've got Watt on the other side. So that aspect of the Steelers I like. But you also have to be able to consistently run the ball, it seems to me. Because to your point, keeping the ball away from Patrick Mahomes, you need a situation like a Derrick Henry. Not to say the Titans can beat him because the Titans don't have a pass rush. But you need that combo, a really good pass rush with your front four and a bruising running back that can really kind of take control of the game and keep the ball out of the other opponent's side. And then you need him to turn the ball over a couple of times, which Patrick Mahomes has almost not done at all. So you need a couple of fluky fumbles, maybe a fumbled punt, something like that in order to give your team a chance to beat the Chiefs. And that's why I think the Chiefs have to be a prohibitive favorite now as we're looking ahead. Not to say they can't lose, but compared to the Steelers, who it wouldn't stun me if they lost to anybody in the playoffs, I'd be pretty stunned if the Chiefs lost.
Yeah, and if you go back to last season when Houston went into Kansas City and they beat the Chiefs, they did it by they ran the ball a lot. The time of possession was heavily in the favor of the Houston Texans. I mean, obviously right now Pittsburgh is set up to play a home game. I still find it hard to believe they can go 16-0, but I think playing that game at home could be an advantage. You're going to be playing in cold weather, which could control Mahomes just a little bit. Again, it's just going to take every time I watch that guy play, I'm just blown away by how good he is at such a young age. And the game just seems to come so easy to him, and he never seems rattled. And I'm just like, whenever he gets sacked or there is a turnover, I'm actually surprised by it because I always expect him to somehow to figure out a way to march his team down the field and get a touchdown, or to throw the ball about 50 yards in the air and have Tyreek Hill end up on the receiving end of it and jogging backward for a touchdown.
The guys don't play against each other, the Steelers and the Chiefs, and I don't think home field advantage is going to matter anywhere near as much as it typically does because obviously we're not going to have full stadiums. But, I mean, there's a possibility here of the Steelers going 15-1 and the Kansas City Chiefs going 15-1, right? If you look down the stretch run of the season. And then who gets that number one overall bye, assuming that we're going to have a bye, because it's also possible that the way this thing is shaken out, they're going to have to cancel some games, and we're going to end up with 8 different teams in the AFC and the NFC as the result if they're not able to play the full and complete season. Do you think we're going to have to cancel any games, or do you think the NFL is going to stay on schedule? Obviously, so far, even though it's a little bit wacky and we had a Wednesday afternoon game, the NFL is still roughly on schedule, but bye weeks are gone now, so you don't have the same flexibility that you did earlier in the schedule for teams that might not be able to play.
Yeah, I look at what happened just with this game that we're talking about with Pittsburgh and Baltimore. The fact that it got, we thought they'd play on Thursday night. I wish they did. The game was so poorly played last night. They just should have played it, or yesterday afternoon. They should have played on Thanksgiving, even with Baltimore missing so many players. It's clear that the NFL doesn't want to do that. They don't want to have any of these games postponed. They want to kind of forge ahead and try to get it over with. They're willing to move a game to Wednesday, which is just the craziest thing, just to get it over and done with. So I think that clearly has to be the plan. One other thing about Pittsburgh, which a lot of people don't mention, because I don't think Ben Roethlisberger is like a favorite, maybe a fan favorite of a lot of people, except if you're in Pittsburgh. How about the year that he's having? I mean, the guy's getting up there in age. The guy's coming back from a major injury. Man, I know he's not the same quarterback that he was, but the guy knows how to win. I got to give him credit. He still finds a way to win, even at the age that he is right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt. All right, we got all sorts of craziness going on in the Big Ten. I started off my show talking about the latest that I'm hearing from talking to people inside the Big Ten. It is that there is a discussion about changing the rules for Ohio State to allow them into the Big Ten title game, which is kind of crazy, right? The athletic directors in the Big Ten can vote to change the eligibility rules that would allow Ohio State to theoretically be able to get into the Big Ten title game. Fair or foul for the Big Ten to do that, primarily to benefit Ohio State?
Tony Kornheiser has been saying this for months now, that they will figure out a way, if Ohio State doesn't play, the 6 games that they have to play?
That's
that
right.
They would find a way to still get them in the Big Ten championship game, because I think the Big Ten athletic directors and the commissioner, they figure the best chance for us to get a team to be in the college football playoff.
The only chance at this point.
Exactly, is for be Ohio State. Because last week, on Saturday, I sat and watched your Vanderbilt squad.
Yes.
Then I watched the second half of my son's school, Northwestern, and after both those games, I said maybe I'll never watch college football again.
Yeah, no kidding.
Those were 2 tough teams to watch. Now listen, Vanderbilt has an excuse; they're not good to begin with. But Northwestern was
tough
undefeated going into. They were going into the Big Ten.
Yes,
is not that good this year in football, and that's why Ohio State is clearly the best team. There's nobody is going to beat them, but if they don't get the right amount of games, I think it's going to happen. They're going to figure out a way to get this team in the championship game because they want them playing in the college football playoff. It's not. I think a lot of people are going to be screaming. It's not going to be people in the Big Ten. It's going to be people in the SEC and conference. Cincinnati's going to be screaming. The other team in Ohio is going to be screaming when they see that.
Well, it's amazing because we're basically rewriting everything. Nothing is written in pen. It's all written in pencil and just getting erased as we go on. And the ACC is a good example because suddenly Notre Dame doesn't have to go to Wake Forest on December 12th and Clemson doesn't have to make up their game against Florida State. They just wiped it out, gave both of those teams a bye week, 2 weeks to get ready for the ACC championship game. Right now, there are reports that Liberty may have some COVID-related issues, Hugh Freeze's Liberty team, and might not be able to play against Coastal Carolina. College Game Day is going down to Myrtle Beach to be there for, in theory, that game. And now, on the fly, there is talk that Coastal Carolina may play against BYU in a battle of undefeated teams that would be scheduled. I mean, we're sitting here on Thursday, and it's possible that game is going to need to rescheduled on the fly. So for everybody out there who was ripping BYU, the Cougars are trying to do whatever they can to get an additional game to put themselves into the college football playoff mix. And congratulations to Coastal Carolina as well, because they would be, sort of on the fly finding an opponent. And I would imagine that there's quite a bit of difficulty and difference in comparison to playing against Liberty to suddenly pivoting and playing against BYU.
Yeah, and I still think ultimately why can't you just have 8 teams eventually just play in a college football playoff? To me, the more the merrier. The 9th, 10th, and 11th team are going to be upset, but I just think it's a way to kind of let some of these good stories get in there. You get Cincinnati in a college football playoff, or maybe BYU or Coastal Carolina. People like that. Would those teams, win 3 games? I tend to doubt that they would, but it's something which would make it a lot more exciting. It would, make it for more of the conferences. Because think about it, the SEC, as you know, is so good. Florida, Texas A&M, someone is going to get jobbed over here. They just are, because they're going to try to spread the wealth a little bit. They're going to try to make it more regionalized to get certain schools in there, and it's just not fair. These teams that have these terrific seasons, and they're going to get looked over, and it's all because I think going into the season, a lot of us would have thought, Clemson, Alabama, those are two right off the top. Ohio State would be the third, and then who's going to be your fourth team? And this year it's going to be Notre Dame.
2020 has been so insane that some stories I feel like totally get overlooked in terms of how absurd they are. Right now in Santa Clara County in California, you've got the 49ers moving to Arizona, Stanford going to Washington and Oregon State to play games, and you also have San Jose State going to Hawaii to play a game because they are prohibited from playing inside of that county. How absolutely insane is it that 3 different teams inside of the same county are going to be in 3 different states going forward at a minimum, 2 really in the case of Stanford, rather than be able to play at home?
It seems to defeat the whole purpose, because now you're putting everybody on a plane and everybody's traveling. Now, listen, if it were me, I wouldn't mind going to Hawaii for a little while, especially at this time of the year, get some nice weather.
Yeah.
But it makes no sense, and that's why I think the Golden State Warriors, they're going to start their season on the road, which for them is probably fortunate, because they could be in a situation too where they could actually be in a lockdown situation in San Francisco. It makes absolutely no sense. You knew the NFL was going to be able to adjust, because they want to get these games over with, and it's not going to be great for the 49ers. I guess they were also thinking about going to Texas to play at Jerry Jones' world. I don't get it at all. I don't understand how you watch some of the games. There's fans in the stand. You watch some of the games. There's cardboard cutouts in the stand. I don't understand it from stadium to stadium, state to state. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm going to the Browns-Titans game this weekend. I'll be sitting in the stand, in the stands. It'll be the 4th different NFL game I've gone to in my hometown of Nashville. But yes, if you're in California, we've got teams fleeing, and before all is said and done, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the state of California is not allowing the Rams and the Chargers, as well as USC and UCLA to play, right? I mean, and by the state of California, I mean initially LA County, and then maybe also it's spreading to Gavin Newsom in the state of California. All right, we got a little bit of a trade that caught the world by storm and had a lot of interest in terms of NBA fans reacting. And I don't really think it changed anything. I'm curious what you think as a guy who's covered the NBA for a long time. Russell Westbrook is getting shipped from Houston all the way up to the Wizards. The Wizards are shipping John Wall, who's been injured over the last couple of years, down to Houston. Both fan bases, reacted excitedly just because it's a big news story. But to me, the Rockets still aren't very good, and the Wizards still aren't very good. And I guess I would prefer maybe the Rockets side of the equation, because at least they got rid of Russell Westbrook. But neither one of these teams feels like a legitimate championship contender to me in any way.
Well, both teams, they traded guys that make a crazy amount of money. Like, their contracts are impossible to deal with. My thing about Westbrook going to Washington is Westbrook, to me, is a bigger star than John Wall. He's been an MVP in the league. He's had a couple of seasons where he's averaged a triple-double. I think from star appeal, he's a bigger name. Remember, John Wall has not played. Now think about this. He has not played an NBA game since December 26th of 2018.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He's almost coming on 2 full years of not playing an NBA game. And remember this too, Clay. John Wall's never been out of the second round. In the moment of truth, when I think it was against the Celtics and Isaiah Thomas, he was terrible in the second half of that Game 7, which would have put him in his first ever conference finals. Russell Westbrook has been to a finals, been to the conference finals a couple of times. I get it. Listen, he's not,
not since Durant, though.
I get it.
Yeah.
He's going to drive you nuts at some of the stuff you do. But let me ask you this. If you had to pay, who would you rather pay to see play, Russell Westbrook or John Wall? I still think most people would rather see Westbrook play.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And it'll be interesting to see how he does. But he's also now developed kind of this toxic personality, because he's gone from Oklahoma City, where he obviously had a long tenure, to Houston, relatively short-lived, and now to D.C. And I think the big takeaway is there was talk about him being traded, about Harden being traded, about maybe the balance of power shifting in some way. That hasn't happened, at least with this trade, I think it's fair to say.
No, I think you're right about that, but he'll also have the ball in his hands a little bit more. And when he was in Oklahoma City, he was good. He was actually good with those young players because he plays hard. He plays all the time. He holds guys accountable. To me, John Wall, like when you haven't played in 2 years and you're coming off a knee and an Achilles, that's something that's tough to come back from. I mean, I know everyone says that he looks great, and then he had that quote, if you remember, over the summer. I feel I'm 110%, and then but I'm not going to go play in the bubble. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You haven't played in 2 years, and you could have gone down and played, but I'm going to put it off until next December. I don't know. I just don't think, to me, Westbrook is still more of a serious player. I look at it that way.